Hi. Evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone that's joining us online as well. We've had a couple of apologies submitted to Sam. Do we have any others from anyone else? Nope. Connie, you've got Connie. Right, then that moves us on to the minutes. Are we happy to approve the minutes of the meeting last month? Everyone okay with that? Yeah.
Agreed.
Brilliant. Just before we start, there's someone online under the name iPhone. We don't know who you are. If you've signed in on your iPhone, do you mind just letting us know your full name, please? Otherwise, we'll have to remove you from the meeting before we continue. Okay, brilliant. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Right, well, without further ado, then we'll move on to the third item, which is the projects update from John.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As I reported at the last meeting, we have 4 projects agreed. One has already started. The other 3 intend to start into the new year. I'll be visiting the personal safety and self-defense project on the 2nd of December, and hopefully Sarah will be able to attend with us on that. In relation to a query or an action from the previous meeting that James raised, I have spoken to MOPAC in relation to the possibility of using some of our funds that are available. Unfortunately, MOPAC resisted it, but it is going back up the ranks to see if it is possible. Just for those that are new this evening, we receive a funding of £22,787, which is to be used for projects. And we've chosen 4, all agreed with MOPAC, and those, as I said, are proceeding. But as a result of previous underspend, we do have currently £14,310.51, to be precise, available to us for other projects. And I think as a board, moving forward, I believe it's probably feasible that we do have a item under a forthcoming meeting to decide what we can do with that, or whether or not there is a project that anyone else out there has. If they could let me know, and then obviously I can assess it. MOPAC are happy for us to use the funding as long as it is used in the correct and appropriate manner, without having to go back to them as part of this year's fees. So that's my update at this end. Any questions? Councillor Anand, could you use your mic? Could you use your mic?
It's like introducing yourself and you're forgetting, you're just going to a conversation. Quickly, thank you for that, John. The 14K, which is available from MOPAC, and you're saying that you'd like to see more projects or groups come forward. Would you say, you probably might need to scope it out to say what's the criteria if it is slightly off what we are normally using the money for, but as long as it's to do with crime and safety, I think maybe mapping out criteria which will support those groups to come forward. Otherwise, if you've still got the red tape kind of criteria, they might not come forward. And I think you're right, there could be some very good groups out there who could benefit from this funding to work in partnership with us.
No, absolutely. And what I'll sort of arrange with Sam is I'll send through to each board member the criteria that the projects need to adhere to. And moving forward, I think certainly we've got enough for certainly 1, possibly 2 good projects there. Just so everyone's aware, I mean, it's a maximum of £5,000. Not every project will use that amount, but if we've got more projects looking for less, then that's great. If we've got some bigger projects at that sort of level, then obviously we'll have to be a little bit careful with the spend. But No, I'll make sure that each board member has the criteria sent to them over the next few days.
John, would it be the same criteria that we're using, or would you be able to sort of identify it a bit more so that it's a bit more flexible for those groups to apply? Because if they don't really fall under the original criteria that we have, how will they then be able to apply if we haven't sort of modified the criteria to make it a bit more open for the groups to apply?
I think I'd like to try, if possible, to stick to the 4 criteria, because I think that makes perfect sense. If, however, there is one that was slightly outside, then that would be a decision for the board, and we would have to obviously take it here. But I think, to be fair, what we've got to be realistic about is that MOPAC haven't taken this money back. They have left it with us, which is as good. And as I reported at the last meeting, they had taken some of the money away from us because we had an underspend in previous years, but I was able to battle with them and get the full allowance of 22,787. So, and also, don't forget, this is also money that, in all fairness, could go to admin fees, but the grace of the department here, they have allowed us as a board to use this money for suitable projects. But yeah, I think we stick with the 4 criteria that MOPAC have given us, just for the time being.
With a bit of flexibility.
I may give you a bit of flexibility, Councillor Anand.
But thank you for all your efforts in retaining the money, because it's really helpful. It could have gone quite pear-shaped if you hadn't had that conversation with the right people at the right time. And I'm thankful to MOPAC as well for allowing us that sort of flexibility in using that money. Thank you, John.
That's all right. Thank you. Any other questions? That's me finished.
Just, I'd like to quickly make a point in relation to your question on flexibility. I mean, John, it's all in John's hands with the projects, but in previous years, you know, there's obviously the borough has different, needs, etc. And some projects can be extremely creative, and there is always space to cater for those if they're working towards reducing crime or educating people on crime. So there's always that flexibility if it works specifically for Ealing. So, yeah. Right. Well, it's now heavily over to you two. And I think I've been told that the Clearhold build project update's coming from you, Superintendent. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so Clearhold build is a concept which is linked to some of the work that we've already started, and I've started since arriving in April, linked to the Strongest Ever Neighbourhood programme. Delivery program board, of which I'm part of. It's one concept which is also driven by the Home Office, and it was piloted prior to my arrival in Ealing as the neighbourhood superintendent on my previous command, which was Barnet, Brent and Harrow. It's got a couple of pilot sites across London, but it's got, I suppose, in the name, it obviously gives it away in terms of 3 sort of defined elements to it. It's a large piece of work which is place-based, tackling crime and antisocial behaviour. So, and it will dock in locally with the council structure within Ealing in terms of some of the existing forums that are already there. Within the council, of course, as well, there's been recent significant investment in a team, a match-funded team that supports the local officers, which Lee leads on my behalf. Which is a match-funded team which focuses on antisocial behaviour, crime in challenging estates that we have. So we're quite well set already, I think, where we've got an operational team that will deliver this work for us. Yeah, the 3 principles, so clear. So once we've identified estates that we want to focus our efforts as a partnership, we will work in conjunction with the local authority and other stakeholders and other partners to effectively target individuals that we know are causing harm, whether that be antisocial behaviour, linked to drugs, and other kinds of criminality, and consider all kind of tactical options, I suppose, from the police side, and also in conjunction with the council. A lot of legislation that's been used in some of the pilot sites, is in particular in Barnet in northwest London, have involved really strong use of closure notices, closure orders, open space closure powers, which we have, and also the council can adopt and use as well. And then overlaid that with other forums linked to care boards, linked to adult safeguarding, linked to children's services, to make sure that there's some wraparound in some of the addresses that we might be looking to target, enforce, but equally also deter from ongoing behaviour, which we know is causing harm. The other element to the work around Clear Hold Build is effectively what tangible resources under the London Crime Prevention Fund does the council already have at its disposal, where we can work collaboratively together to build a prosperous estate community going forward. We've already done a mapping exercise in Ealing. We've done this across all of the boroughs in London as the Met Police with our stakeholders, so that we can pinpoint what's already available to us in terms of those services, but also what gaps we have as well. In terms of the rollout of Clear Hold Build, I'm really keen to implement it locally within Ealing, and I've made that very clear to other members of the Safe and Neighbouring Board. I am waiting on a decision as to whether there will be a rollout plan for the Met, and which will be based upon risk and harm, of which we've already engaged with my counterpart who's working for Brent Police at the minute, Will Lexton-Jones, who's my neighbourhood superintendent over there, who's leading the pilot for Barnet. I'm still waiting on a decision as to when I will know where we sit, I suppose, in the kind of rank order. I have a good understanding of where we do sit at the moment, but I can't yet share that with the Safe Neighbourhood Board. And if I have to wait to adopt the principles of Clear Hold Build, then I've already sought authority as to whether or not we can do a hybrid version. So not diluting the model and the pilots, but trying to do something along the same lines. And of course, I'll share that with community safety partner leads, and we'll look to implement it going forward. But I suppose in summary, Chair, still waiting for a go-ahead. Happy to implement as soon as possible, and we'll do that in conjunction with the community safety team, where we will focus our efforts on certain estates on an evidence-based approach. So that's Clear Hold Build, I suppose, in a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm happy to take any questions. It is being piloted at Graham Park Estate in Barnet, and I've made the offer already to members of either scrutiny or council to engage and come over and see what that work looks like. It is my former team, and one of my chief inspectors was already had a 4-hour meeting this week on that very subject, about whether or not we can start to adopt the principles locally in a sort of a light touch if we can't be given the green light. And I'm happy to take questions. I think there's already one, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Superintendent. I know that you spoke about Barnet and the good work that's going on behind the scenes there. How long has the pilot been running?
So the pilot started prior to my arrival here in April. So it probably started in earnest around January, with full agreement of the local strategic partnership, and tracked every month with the council, with police and other stakeholders, where we would come together and we would look at the progress. When I started post at the end of April, Will started at the same time at Brent and continued and started the pilot, I suppose, in its perfect form. So continuing the work that had already started, but adopting the absolute principles with guidance from the Home Office. So it started in earnest in April.
May I, Chair? Thank you. And I think that same kind of model maybe when you're looking at working through Ealing as well. I think as your partners, we'd like to support the project where we can. At this point, Superintendent, I'm not saying we've got massive budget to do that, but whereas partners, we can work together to mitigate those antisocial behaviour elements in the community. We will do our best. I'm sure Jess might tell me off later, but I'm sure Jess will be part of this project to make sure that we can deliver in partnership with you to make that huge difference that we really want to make. But I would really like to take you up on the offer of visiting Barnet and the pilot itself. And I know that you did propose that to the scrutiny panel a couple of weeks back. Maybe we could chase up the scrutiny chair to find out if they would be interested. And like I said, I kept calling you a councillor that day, Superintendent, but I'm quite awake today, and I'd like to take that offer up. And rather than having two trips to particular projects and particular areas that were discussed at scrutiny, I'd like to be part of that. So it's one trip, and we can all see the work that is going on in Barnet, and I'm also going to Hendon to see your back office. We will take that back to scrutiny at some point and see if there's a take up for those visits.
Yep. Thanks, Chair and Councillor. Yeah, I've been called far worse in 26 years in the police service. So yeah, no need to apologise. Thank you. In fact, I was demoted to sergeant that day as well, if I remember. So, you know, it was an interesting meeting. No, I don't think it was yourself, Councillor, but yeah, someone else did. But yeah, so no problem at all. Absolutely. And yeah, it's still on my list to do. In fact, I do have my scrutiny panel notes with me this evening, Councillor, because there's stuff I need to follow up as well, I know. And Chair, just on that point, there's obviously elements of review that happen. So whilst they have the monthly meeting, I know at Barnet, I am expecting some element of a review from Will Lexton Jones, which will come no back to our programme board within the Stronger 7 neighbourhood. So, which no doubt will then predicate where that direction of travel of Clearhold Bill goes, whether it's in its utopian form, I suppose, or whether or not we have the options of doing something a bit of a hybrid base. So I know that Will is taking that back to my link commander and my matrix manager, Commander Helen Harper. So
Yeah,
Yes,
Chair.
sure.
Thank you, Superintendent. I know that we all work very closely with the West London Equality Centre, which is just down the road from us on the Broadway. I think there's some really good work which is going on in that centre, but I just felt that when I did visit them and the work that we're all doing, it's slightly disconnected. And I think that this would be an opportunity if there was with them, with the partnership, to be a bit more stronger, a bit more cohesive. Sometimes you want particular partners to be on board, but there's been some kind of a gap over the years where you might want to just close that and be sort of singing off the same hymn sheet, because we're all doing the same thing, you know, about reducing antisocial behaviour in the community, reducing crime, working with our partners. I think maybe a bit of connection with them and inviting them as well, maybe to join us at Barnet.
happy to, Chair, happy to take that one away with Councillor Anand afterwards, just to make those links and connections. No problem at all. Absolutely.
Thank you. Jags, you have a question?
Hello. Oh, yeah, sorry. 2 points. I'm trying to understand, maybe it's me, I missed it, the Clearhold Bill project. What's the difference? Because the Met has been working very well with the borough anyway on targeting and the stuff that you talked about for some years. I thought there was a very solid partnership approach. It sounds the same. I'm trying to understand what the difference is between what's already happening on this project. So if you can just give a little bit more information on that, because I'm not clear. And also the results of the trials so far, whilst keen to adopt, what has been those over and above successes, which are not happening with the borough now?
Thanks. Good questions. So the extra element that Clearhold Build brings is drawing in specialist capability from other parts of the Met Police that you don't necessarily see here within our teams. So which will look at serious and organised crime, county lines, elements of vulnerability around exploitation, other specialist capabilities as well around police tactics, use of different legislation, which we would use sometimes here, but not necessarily. So I suppose that's the answer in terms of the extra capability it brings, and also expertise from the Home Office as well, because it's tracked by them in terms of some of the deliverables. My former Chief Inspector, Rob Gibbs, who's over there on one of the pilot sites, regularly links in with my local Chief Inspector here in terms of what's different. What's different, I suppose, is the sheer scale of operations rhythm that we wouldn't necessarily be able to bring with the current resourcing structure that I have and Lee oversees on my behalf with James Herring. So you're bringing an extra asset, I suppose, into the Borough of Ealing to support not just in an enforcement base, but in conjunction with the council to try to make communities far safer and also visibly safer as well. So, and it's all part of a longer term plan around regeneration. So there's all of those elements which I think Clearhold Build does bring. It's a good question though, because I did pose the question to myself really about what's different here in terms of normal policing. But it's all of those things I would suggest. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry. So yeah, so whilst I've got some sort of updates personally from the Chief Inspector and Will, it will be subject to a proper review, obviously, and it will come back to the Strongest Ever Neighbour Programme Board. But you'd expect to see at the beginning of all of these pilots, you know, a really clear evaluation framework, I suppose, at the start, which historically hasn't always been a strong point, I suppose, of the Met Police in terms of what actually does success look like. But I know that those are in place. And when we get the opportunity to share, and hopefully I get the opportunity to implement, I'll be able to talk through with the partners and bring back to the Safer Neighbour Board what those kind of key benchmarks look like for success for us. But there's a lot of good work I know that's been happening at Barnet and some of the other sites. So happy to bring those back, Chair. It would be good to get the go ahead to start, if I'm honest.
Can I just come back on that point, the first point? So in terms of those resources, I'm clear now on the specialist support. So has the Met got a plan for those specialist units as this program expands? Are they resourced effectively, or are they just going to use, are they retargeting the existing resource for this project? Because I know these are very specialist teams, they take years to develop. So is there a plan around this, or are we just going to get to a stage where they're going to say we've got to wait another number of years before we train officers in these areas?
No, they're teams that already exist and we can tap into, so they're more central functions, but they will come and support the borough approach to policing. Obviously in agreement with and also alongside our council partners and colleagues. And Jess had his hand up, Chair, sorry.
Yes, Jess.
Thanks. I was just going to talk about what we were previously doing, I suppose, which includes our Spaces Board, which is something we've been doing for a couple of years. Part of that was kind of derived from our contextual safeguarding approach to making people safer, particularly young people, and recognizing that young people come to risk of exploitation and harm outside of the home in the kind of general public spaces. And there being two key factors in that respect in terms of the individual risk each of those people have due to their own vulnerabilities or what have you, but then also the locality where that exploitation takes place as a locality that potentially we might be able to do things to try and make that a less attractive prospect in that particular location. So we have been working for about the last year and a half to look at some of the key sites. Lee's regularly attends that meeting. And we've done some kind of data stuff to look at where violence happens more often, I suppose, public spaces, not private spaces. So kind of parks and open spaces, highways, you know, those in-between spaces as well, alleys, things like that, where we get referrals from professionals, but also we have information and data that indicates that those issues happen more there, and looking at that space with people who own and manage that land to try and think about how can we make this a less attractive place to, I don't know, robbery or ASB or kind of any VORG related stuff in particular has been a place where we're focused. So we've kind of already got up an approach which sounds to me quite aligned to Clearhold Build. It's not the same, but it has some key features that are shared, I suppose, which is a good start to have a pilot. And similarly, I'm having a dialogue, as Councillor Anand alluded to, about whether we can repurpose some capital around some of this stuff, just to help us where where needed, do some work to a public space to make it more safe. You know, and we're not talking huge sums, but where it's around the kind of environment and whether there's any changes that make it easier for the police to police or easier for us to collectively manage, to at least have the option of being able to consider that, I suppose. So I think it will align quite well, but it'd be useful to get the green light so we can actually sit down and start to go, right, what does this mean? Where do we want to trial it? What's the creativity in this space? Where's the concerns lie? What are the community telling us about spaces where this might be an appropriate tool to use? So I think it's quite exciting in that context. And I think when we get the green light, we've got the potential to do something quite innovative in that space. And I'd like to think that we will be able to deliver that, but it might take a little while to get all the ducks in a row, I suppose.
Do we have any comments or questions from anyone online before we move on to the next item? James.
Sorry, thanks very much for spotting it. It's been really helpful hearing this discussion, both from Superintendent Lynch and from Jess. I just wonder if there's some way a ward-based distillation of risk areas and proposed actions could evolve and be shared with the ward panels as they come forward. I mean, thing that sort of bubbled up in the last few weeks in one part of Hanwell is there's a school which is in a loop, and literally one side of that road is just the school. So unlike a normal road where you have houses both sides of the street and looking down the end of it, so there's a lot of passive observation. There are areas which have less overlooking from residential accommodation. I can see Carolyn's coming on. She may need to pick that up. And this also reflects something in my ward, which is Northfields, where Hereford Road, which goes down, the houses both sides of the street, and then turns along the northern boundary of Little Ealing Primary School. And there are no houses looking onto the one of the main entrances to Little Ealing. And a few years ago, we found probable drug dealers were pulling up in the unoverlooked space to conduct their business. So, you know, what Jess has just said and what the superintendent has flagged up is there could be something that could evolve into an information pack for the ward panels, and it's just a suggestion.
Okay, anyone else online? Thanks for that, James.
I
Yes.
just wanted to ask, we were talking about how the project would be evaluated and what evaluation framework is in place. And there's also been the implication that the project is working is underway elsewhere as pilot projects. Is anyone in a position to tell us what you think success looks like? Have you got a list of measurable outcomes or outputs that you can look at? Because there's certainly plenty of scope for this kind of investment in trying to improve antisocial behaviour, whilst also looking at positive outcomes for whoever it is that's implementing the antisocial behaviour. It's something that comes up. It's been set as a priority all the time I've been chairing what was the Elthorne Ward SNT is now North Hanwell, Hanwell Broadway SNT. And, I can't honestly say that we've got the antisocial behaviour in the centre of Hanwell under control. I mean, it's just not under control. And some of the things that have been implemented in collaboration with the council have actually made it worse for everybody else using the particular space that we're talking about. So, I think it would be really useful if it's possible to share with us the outcomes that you're looking for, the measurable outcomes that you're looking for, how you're going to measure those outcomes, and let us know what the objectives are for the project, other than just improving antisocial behaviour.
Thank you, Carolyn.
No, really good question. Thanks, Carolyn. And yeah, I'm happy to bring that back to the board and also filter that through the ward panels as well as per James's suggestion too. But I won't do that until we've got the go ahead, and I won't do it until I've agreed what that local delivery looks like with the council. But I mean, broadly, it's about making places safer, reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. I mean, I suppose in terms of what good looks like. And, you know, so you can expect most things to be, I suppose, pinned to those three broad areas. But yeah, no, I'm happy to bring that back, of course, Chair. Thank you. And yeah, very good question. Thanks, Karen.
Well, fingers crossed you get the go-ahead soon. But I'd like to move on to the next item, just wary of time. If anyone does have any other questions or comments, just, you know, feel free to email them through. Business engagement and the update on shoplifting in high streets. I think that's you. Over to you, Lee.
Evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yep, I will gladly take this one and talk about shoplifting, which I'm sure everyone is aware is almost like a national pandemic now. It's occurring across the whole of the country. And in some places, it's a lot worse than others. Generally, it's for us on Ealing, it's going to be the high footfall areas, Ealing Broadway, Southall, Acton, and the generally the bigger high streets that are suffering. I have to say that for police to deal with every shoplifting offence is impossible for us to deal with. The reason why I say that is that, sorry, I'll take a step back. It's impossible for us to investigate every shoplifting offence. And the reason why I say that is because we wouldn't be dealing with anything else other than shoplifters. So all of our other crimes wouldn't, in my opinion, get a look in because shoplifting is that rife. So the Met has taken a decision that we generally don't investigate. We do still take reports and we still record it as a crime. That's an important factor. But we don't put all our resources into investigating any shoplifting offence that is under £200 unless there are certain exceptions that apply. And those exceptions will be that there is a suspect on scene that's been detained, normally by security. So if there's a suspect on scene and they've stolen something, we will always attend. If the offence is aggravated in any way, now it can be aggravated by various reasons. First one could be threats, intimidation, could actually be an assault against security or staff, or it could be verbal, like racial hatred, threats, that type of thing. So if it's aggravated any other way, or if it's a shoplifter that is a frequent, well-known shoplifter, we will come along and deal with it then. Generally, it's response teams that deal with these. And obviously there is a priority of level of what response team will deal with, because if there is someone out there that's being robbed, mugged, violence against a person, generally takes priority over everything. But we do deal with shoplifting, and just to recap, it's anything over £200 we'll deal with. Under £200 we don't generally investigate unless it's got those aggravating factors, suspect on scene or a frequent shoplifter. Now, this poses a problem because I'm quite often talking to the three bids that we have in Acton, Ealing and West Ealing. And we don't do neighbourhoods, I feel, don't do enough engagement with our business communities. So upon speaking to various other people and colleagues of mine, we are going to trial a business engagement day. And this is going to be starting in the new year, where I'm going to dedicate all of my neighbourhood officers on a day, midweek, not on a weekend when it's the shop's busiest time, during the week, to go out to all of our businesses within the 7 town centres. And we're going to visit everyone, engage with them. We're going to provide them with a pack, which I have here, that I will pass around to people to have a look at, that has various bits of information in there on how to protect your property, how to report crimes. It'll give details of your local neighbourhood officers and their ward emails and telephone numbers. It's a pack designed for businesses. I would like to take credit for it myself, but I can't because someone else in the Met has actually put that together. But what we'll do is we'll attend every business. We'll speak with them, managers, business owners, as long as they want to talk with us. And we will complete that engagement piece to find out if they've got any particular problems, if there's any particular crime trends that they're having, if they know of any people that are targeting them for thefts or for anything else. And we will provide that reassurance piece that we are there, and we will give them the right guidance also to prevent crime. So we give them some crime prevention advice. We're going to do that every other month to start with, and it's on trial. It's quite a big commitment because if you think about Ealing Broadway, there's a lot of shops, a lot of businesses there. So that's a huge amount of work to do, but it might actually have to be 2 days a month. But I'm going to try and get every neighbourhood officer to work on that day. So for instance, Ealing Broadway has 3 wards around it, Ealing Broadway, Walpole and Ealing Commons. We're going to drive those into one and have 9 officers that go out in one day to speak to all of our businesses. If we can't manage it on one day, we'll have to take it to a second day. But the idea is that everyone will get one of these packs, and I'm happy to hand these out if people want to have a look. I brought some with me. I'm sorry online that I can't hand these out to you. But Jack's one for you. Obviously, we'll be attending all of the 7 town centres all on the same day. These are only. I'll wait till they're back to speak.
We've got a big booming voice.
Yeah, yeah. So these are packs that we've had for a little while. There is a card in there for those that have got the packs that will notice that it's got the old email address on because that's all changed. So we're in the process of getting those reprinted, reevaluated. So the pack will contain quite a lot of useful information for the business owners, and hopefully it will build that engagement piece, and we can then help to identify crime trends and problematic people that are causing problems to the businesses that we can then deal with and target. Are there any questions at all?
Yes, we've got a question from Enda online. If you unmute yourself, please.
Hi there, Enda Benoit. I'm the East Acton Ward Panel Chair. It's just it's a really good initiative. I think it's amazing that you're reaching out to businesses. And previously, when we've had meetings, the ward panel meetings, some businesses do attend because it's in their benefit, I guess. But the ones that have attended are not retail businesses. So we've got where I live on Bromyard Avenue, we've got 2 quite big gym like leisure centres. So we've got Mode Club and David Lloyd's, and I know they would be keen to get involved in something like that. Would you be reaching out to other businesses, not just retail basically? Yeah.
We would start with retail first because it is the pandemic is for shoplifting, but most certainly we would be reaching out to other businesses, perhaps not on the same day. That would be a separate day that we could do that. But yes, we would reach out to them, but not on that particular day because we would be focusing on the businesses that suffer from the shoplifting.
Sure.
Hope
Thank
that
you.
answers your question. But yes, we'll take that on board.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Just one suggestion from James, which I'm sure is already well underway, and John will, I suspect, will be running with it, is, okay, this scheme is really great and it'll start in the new year, but there are networks of retailers that sort of do pre-Christmas events, or is it Light Up the Lane in Pittshanger, and then there's something in the Avenue, and there must be other similar arrangements elsewhere in the borough. And those might be, the organisers of those events might have contact lists of retailers, so they'll know names, phone numbers in their locality, which might be of use to the local dedicated ward officers when they roll this scheme out in that particular location. But, you know, John will know more about it. It doesn't happen where I am, but there could be a bit something useful there.
Thank you, James. I'd most certainly take that on board. We're also going to engage with wall panels, speak to them, because quite often people from businesses turn up to wall panels. I know that Ealing Broadway certainly does, and various other wall panels that we go to as well. So there's going to be a lot of engagement beforehand. Like I say, we're going to trial it. If it works, we're going to keep it going, but it's that initial trying to get that engagement with our businesses and trying to reassure our businesses that we're there.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the question again, James, online. All I would say is, you know, obviously I'm acutely aware that the challenges that we've got around, it's quite unpalatable, isn't it, when you hear Lee talk about the thresholds that we have in terms of when we will investigate, and also the elements around, I suppose, a bit of a matrix as to some elements that we would consider in terms of aggravated factors. It doesn't help in terms of the, you know, effectively dealing with crime agenda, which is important to me as the local neighbourhood superintendent when I'm having to prioritise how we deal with certain events and incidents. It doesn't sit with me, if I'm honest. So not resting on our laurels, whilst this is really good that we're doing some engagement work and preventative work, I think there's something I've got to take back in terms of obviously time of year as well. As we approach Christmas, naturally we see a huge increase in footfall. There's other opportunities which I will be looking to overlay this with, you know, when we look at crowded spaces and protected security in terms of police visibility in some of the town centre locations, which will naturally help deter some criminality and help with the visibility bit, which is obviously a recurring theme, as Jags would know from our New Met for London session in August. And then there's other elements as well. So Lee is linked in significantly with the London Safety Centre, and you would have all seen nationally the commentary around retail crime, some of the tactics that the Met are starting to deploy and utilise as well around targeting those that we know are causing the most harm. And there was quite a rich debate in another forum more recently around use of CCTV and facial recognition, of which, you know, the Commissioner is really behind using new innovative technologies to help and fight crime. So it's certainly something I would consult, but equally engage with the strategic partnership and bring back to this board about whether we start to utilise some of that technology, because we have seen some real positives in terms of facial recognition being piloted across London, of which I'm watching with interest. And then there's just a couple of other bits as well, which may well come up, Chair, in the session, whereby a little bit of restructuring is happening. Well, I say a little bit, a lot of restructuring is happening in the background. I won't underplay that, whereby I'm trying to align my neighbourhood officers with the council teams and also with some of my youth teams, which have come up in the margins today, just so that there's a more of a holistic approach in terms of how we tackle some of our crimes and also call upon our officers. So, for example, I know that at certain times of the day, certain bids, town centre locations will have more of an impact on theft if we were to do the temporal analysis, and equally at different times of the year. And also we may see other elements like antisocial behaviour taking place, you know, minor shoplifting, but there's a youth element is where I'm going with this. So that's another area of which I'm kind of addressing locally with some of my teams about, could we be doing something differently, I suppose, in our approach, not just from a, let's just talk about shoplifting, but let's talk about youth, diversion, other opportunities that we may well have if we're starting to see various hotspots. But yeah, it's a difficult space, not one that I want to prioritise, but an area I know that's getting a lot of focus. And then finally, a long-standing challenge, I suppose, in particular certain town centre locations, has been around having a town centre team. Now, it's quite topical, I won't lie, I do have this conversation regularly with the BCU commander, Sean Wilson, and I am trying to present options to Sean Wilson around what coverage we could have if I had a dedicated town centre team and what that could look like locally, of which I'm continuing to lobby, advocate for, and work with him around how we could design that into my operating model, I suppose. So in addition to other updates, which no doubt at some point I will give either to this forum and others in terms of strongest ever neighbourhoods and uplift, which is an important issue, but that word in itself means a lot to many people.
Thank you. I think we've got two questions online. One from, we'll go with Ricky first and then Jerry. Over to you, Ricky.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so just to say that I am the Ealing Broadway ward panel chair, and shoplifting obviously is a topical question in our forum meetings. But as you say, there are lots of businesses that do attend, but there is quite a divide as to what should be a ward priority. The residents don't think there should be such a focus on helping businesses, and it should be all about sort of, you know, there's a bit of I think it sort of slightly gets a bit fuzzy as to who they're seeking to protect when there is a shoplifter in the shop. But there is quite a divide. So if you were to attend meetings and you were to talk about this great initiative, I just feel that you might need to sort of give something to residents in the room to say how, you know, you are perhaps helping them. And I think knowing sort of how the response team deal with things in priority would be helpful to know, and would be a good starting point. But I think you need to be aware that there is this divide, which is very apparent, to the point that, you know, with our last meeting, we struggled to get shoplifting to remain as a ward priority. And this is Ealing Broadway.
Thanks, Ricky. Over to you.
Thank you for your comments, and I attended not the last wall panel meeting at Ealing Broadway, but the one prior to, and I do remember there being some conversations between residents and businesses. So I do understand the challenges that you have at that meeting, but I think you chair it well. And it can be quite diplomatic at times, but I will certainly bring items to the table that will satisfy both, and I can discuss that prior to the meeting with you. I certainly want to advertise this, and I certainly know that at some wall panels, because I think you generally have about 25 people. You're my biggest ward panel.
Yes.
Yeah, the room is actually packed.
Yeah.
So I do understand the challenges. So yes, fair point. Thank you very much, and I will make sure that we come prepared for that.
Thank you.
And I think Superintendent has something to say as well.
Thank you, and yeah, thanks for everything you're doing with the Ealing Broadway ward panel. And yeah, it sounds like I need to get to that one as well with Lee. Thank you. So equally, again, this is what should be quite a quick decision for me to make. Sometimes it's very difficult to operationalise, but Jess and others in the room will know that I've managed to move the street duties officers that we've got, so the officers that are training, from another borough not a million miles away that begins with H, within Hillingdon, so it could be Hounslow, or Hammersmith, I don't know. Sorry, that was a bit vague, wasn't it? Anyway, I've managed to move them from Hillingdon with a focus with an already existing Uxbridge Town Centre team to work from Ealing. So, and some of the numbers which I'm starting to see with, as you can imagine, the Met's recruitment drive, and the challenges that we have around that. But nonetheless, we are seeing quite a good number of officers coming through on the pipeline. We'll be working from Ealing Police Station, and we're kind of in the realms of, at any given point, between 20 to 30 tutor officers, so which will help. And for me, being a bit of a traditionalist, which you can either see as a good thing or as a bad thing in the Met, is actually this is the bread and butter for these officers to learn their craft. And so if they are out in a busy high street, in the environment of Ealing Broadway, for me, I think it's a great place for them to learn their street craft, to support you and your ward panel and the residents of Ealing and Hamwell. And I want them to go left towards Hamwell, and I want them to go right towards Acton and Ealing Common, but in the middle, Ealing Broadway, and all the challenges that Ealing Broadway brings. So, and that is the brief that I've given to the inspector that works within learning and development. Go out there with your officers and make a real difference, high vis, and make an impact, and especially when it comes to retail crime. So just so you know, trying to influence in other ways than you know, in addition to what Lee's already suggested today with the London Safety Centre work.
Can I, sorry, just one last point. Can I just come in just with one point? And
Yes,
it actually relates.
We've got a question from Jerry, and then I want to move on. And
Yeah, of course. It was just to say on this, I mean, recognising the work that the ward panels are doing, we have spent so much time trying to find a place to have the next meeting, because we talked about Percival House, we talked about funding, and it's you know, the time I've wasted as a chair trying to find a room to house the next meeting is incredible. So just can we bear that in mind when we talk about ward panels, funding, and the fact that we have some funds sitting there? It'd be really nice to feel a bit more supported in that area. And I can see James is nodding, having raised it at the last meeting.
So you know, let's be honest, we've got Ealing Police Station not a million miles away, obviously, from where we're sat in Percival House. It's not the best place, if I'm honest, in terms of venue, because it's probably one of the estates that could do with a little bit of an uplift. But I mean, I think that's a conversation. I know it was raised at last Safe and Neighbourhood Board, and there were some discussions about what that could look like. But we do have Ealing Police Station, and we do have a large room that we could utilise.
We're going to be in a church next time, so.
Well, I'm sorry, and I know that, you know, being in a police station isn't always conducive to a productive meeting. But I'll just make the offer as a fail-safe if you really are struggling to find room. And of course, hopefully it's not too difficult for most ward panel members to get to. So I'll make the offer now. Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Anything else?
Jerry.
I think that was that not Jerry.
No, still
Hello?
Rookie.
Sorry, it's awfully confusing when you've not got people's faces. Okay, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, apologies.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just going to say, in regards to utilising Ealing Police Station, please use me as a contact. Email myself on the date, or sorry, with the next wall panel date, if you wish to use Ealing Police Station. I'll facilitate everyone getting in up to the 4th floor.
Thank you very much. We're in St Stephen's Church for the next one for Ealing Broadway, but after that, I might take you up on that. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
Brilliant, thank you. Over to you, Jerry.
Yes, I just wanted to say I will welcome the plan by Lee to sort of go and visit the businesses who I think feel very despondent and don't have a lot of confidence in the police. But I think everyone is missing the point that it's not just about retail crime. We're not trying to retain the stock for businesses. It's the impact it has on the staff. And you find in Ealing Broadway, a lot of companies really struggle to get staff because the staff get so depressed and so fed up of having to handle the antisocial behaviour, the threats against them, that they're trying to do their job, they're trying to serve people, they're trying to stop shoplifting. So it is also about the impact it has on staff. And I think that the police going out to see the businesses will give some of them a little bit of confidence that actually they, you know, when they say that they won't deal with anything under £200, most thefts are well under £200, and the kind of abuse staff get because people know the police are not going to attend is quite incredible, and it's very demoralising and very depressing for people to be working in those kind of environments. So, and most of those people live local, so they are residents. They are residents who are trying to earn a living in their local area, and they are struggling to achieve that because the challenges facing them every day going to work are quite daunting.
So, Jerry, you make some very valid points there, and thank you. I think that's where the aggravating factor will come into many of those shoplifting offences that you're talking about, and they must be reported to us. We will take them on board and we will investigate where there is any aggravating factors. So if there's any intimidation, threats, any assaults, we will deal with it.
Chair, thank you. And yeah, really valid point. And I was just quickly looking at something recently. I've been engaging with the London Safety Centre, an acting superintendent that works within that embedded team. You elicit some really good information there, because we know that you know, 1 in 10 Londoners works in retail, and to play back your point, 60% of that work cohort effectively feel as though they're in fear of going to work. So we are acutely aware, and that is a confidence piece as well, naturally, in terms of how we respond to that. And then just bringing it to life a little bit from lived experience. So after finishing studies and before joining the police, I was a retail manager for 3 years. And I was and have seen the worst of some of the events that can take place in the business crime setting. So acutely aware personally from lived experience about what that looks like. And could recount many events whereby violence had been used towards me personally. So I can relate, I genuinely can. And that's why I'd like to make more of a dent, I suppose, into it here locally with Lee and the local teams.
Yeah,
And
it's not
John?
always just violence, it's the verbal
Right.
abuse as well. It's it's intimidation. It can be intimidating without violence. So
I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you to Sean and Lee for pulling this pack together. One of my many hats I wear is that I'm chair of the High Street Task Force team for the London Borough of Ealing. And look, this is quite clearly an issue with just staffing, it's theft, but more importantly, it's about making our high streets safe for people to come. We want people to come and feel safe in Ealing. And I think it's really an important operation. We are not aware of any other Met team pulling this together. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the task force for actually giving us the time and actually pulling it all together. The new year will be a fresh start. As I said, we want to keep our high street safe. And this is what this board is about, is actually holding you guys to account. We've asked you as a task force here to come up with a plan, and you have done that. So now let's see it go into operation. But thank you. And let's look forward to seeing some positive results come the new year. But thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for those comments. And there's other elements as well, which, I mean, whilst we're not going to probably address today in great detail, but I'm the lead responsible officer for London for antisocial behaviour, and within the antisocial behaviour action plan nationally, there are elements that have a real, I suppose, overlap with retail crime. And one of the concepts which I know is being discussed is around repurposing vacant premises and about how we can utilise those better, which gives that community confidence and more of a visible presence as well. So it's just one other idea that I'd certainly like to consider, you know, as the changing face of high streets, I suppose, across the borough, but something to factor in as well. And I'm sure that won't be lost on community safety team as well, and those that work in that kind of business setting.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to ward panels now, if that's all right with everyone. So over to you for an update on that before we get on to the main update. Of course, yeah.
As my boss is legging it out of the room, it's down to me. So wall panels, I find quite challenging actually, in the fact that not the wall panels themselves, I think they're very efficient and we achieve some good aims, but it's actually getting the right people to the wall panels. And it can be challenging. So we now have 24 wards, to which we have 21 ward panels, and I'll explain about that in a minute. So historically, Southall has generally had a poor take up with residents and people who want to join our ward panels. So we're trying to reinvigorate all of our ward panels, but are doing some work in Southall to join 2 wards together, so that we have 1 meeting for 2 wards. So the 6 wards of Southall will become 3 ward panels. We're trialing it. If it doesn't work, we'll move on to something different. But I will be engaging with Jags, with Councillor Anand, and all of the ward chairs as well to see if it works. So we've got 2 of those up and running. So I've been told by my sergeants today, and we have the 3rd one that the green light is to go, and we should be having Southall Green and Norwood Green up and running very soon. So there's 3 wards there. So 24 wards, a total of 21 ward panels. Like I say, they're all functioning, some are very much, I wouldn't say oversubscribed, but are very well attended. Ealing Broadway, I just have to say that has 25 people and the room's packed. And some in Acton generally have 2 to 5 people, and it's the ones that have less people attending that we need to engage with more and to reinvigorate them and to do some work around them, to either perhaps ask the chair if they're not really keen on progressing and changing and having more people attend. Perhaps it needs a new chair, but that wouldn't be done via us. That would be done via councillors and in agreement with the ward chair as well. We can make some suggestions, of course, but I'm not looking. I think there are some people that perhaps have been doing it a long time and perhaps need to hand over the chair to someone who's more enthusiastic. They are selected wards, though. They're not every single ward. But we just sometimes generally have a low take up, and the ones that we do have a take up with are generally older people within the community. I'm not saying this is every ward panel, but I've noticed it to all the ward panels that I've attended. And we need to try and get more gender mix, and we need to get more ethnicity within the group, and we certainly need more youth. So what we really need to do is to encourage the community of that ward to come to our meetings, to work with us, to tell us what needs to be improved, to tell us what they would like to see police concentrate on, and to make those ward panels a more effective tool to improve the ward that is being represented. I currently have 8 sergeants, all of whom are extremely well averse to running ward panels. For the Acton cluster, I've got Jim Larston, Matt Butland. They have 5 wards between them. For the Ealing cluster, I have James Lenton and Naeem Faisal. That covers Ealing and West Ealing. They have 7 wards between them. The Southall cluster, 2 sergeants again, Lawrence Bisdee and John Twing. They have 6 wards between them. And North Alton Greenford cluster has Ben Kazlicki and Yusuf Hasnaya, who have also 6 wards between them. So generally it's 3 wards per officer. I've tasked them to attend as many of those ward panel meetings as they can themselves, and I've also made a commitment myself, rightly or wrongly, because it's quite a big commitment, to attend at least 2 ward panel meetings per year for every ward. So 24 and 24, that's 48 meetings that I've committed to going to, as well as all of my other meetings, which is a lot, but I actually find by attending them that I can give a thorough overview of things. And I find that I actually enjoy attending them because I see that we get a end product out of it and the right work going forwards to improve the ward. So that's my commitment to it as well. So the key aspects of any ward panel is obviously the structure of the ward. We obviously need a chair, and we need police to attend, and we need members of the local community to attend and give their opinion, their open and honest opinion of how they feel that police are contributing to the ward panel and to the ward itself. It also needs to set priorities, and these priorities really need to be something that we have to strive to achieve, but that can be achievable. But obviously ones that we need to work to. The first priority, MOPAC have directed that has to be to do with violence. So police now set the first ward priority, and it's to do with violence. So that could be a robbery problem, it could be a theft with violence problem, could be an area where there's a hotspot of violence, or an area where there's violence against women and girls, or as we call it, VORG. But the first one is set by police, and it's to do with combating violence, which is one of our priorities within the Met. The other 2 priorities are chosen by the wards themselves, in agreement with the ward chair. And sometimes that can be quite challenging, as we've already discussed on Ealing Broadway. Other wards, it's quite easy to do. It depends upon the volume of people and how people elect to choose their priorities. But setting priorities is obviously an important aspect of a ward panel. Using data, another key aspect. So we will always attend with a set of data that gives analytical views of the crimes that have occurred from one ward panel meeting to the next ward panel meeting, and an overview, yearly overview. We have a very good data system that can give us all that information at the press of a few keys. I'm still learning how to use it. It is quite complex, but my boss here is an expert at it. And I have most of my sergeants who are also very good at it as well. But ultimately, it tells us where our hotspots of crime are, and we can try and assist the ward panel to try and achieve the right goals, i.e. look at the right crimes that are affecting their area. But ultimately, the two priorities are for the ward to decide themselves. But we will always bring data to the meeting. We will always monitor our activities against the priorities, and we will always bring back information to say, yes, we've achieved it, or no, we haven't, and this is the reason why. And we will always try and work to try and achieve those priorities that are set within the ward panel meeting. The next one is we are always trying to improve our crime prevention. So we will always give crime prevention advice, and that's another key aspect to a ward panel meeting, as long as inclusivity and representation of the ward communities, which we've also just spoken about, which means that, in my opinion, it should be open to any member of the community for that ward that would like to attend. Sometimes that can bring in a big ward panel meeting. So ideally, that would have to be through the agreement of the chair. But what I am proposing as I go round, and the sergeant should be proposing this as well, is that we will, with the chair's permission, open it up to all of the community via all of our social media outlets, including Nextdoor. And I keep talking about Nextdoor, but it does have a big uptake for us. The last count was 67,900 and something people across the whole of Ealing that now goes out to. But we also use Facebook, Twitter, OWL, Nextdoor, and we have various other platforms that are coming online later on during the course of the following year. So we are reaching out to people, and it has worked quite well. So we trialed it in Acton. It has worked quite well in Acton, and we saw a number of people attend. I think there were 6 other people that attended that didn't normally attend on one meeting. I know that that's gone out to thousands of people within that ward, but even for 6 people to turn up is an improvement. That's 6 additional new people, sorry. So we need that representation of the ward to improve on every single panel. Though in Broadway, I think we're struggling to find a room that's big enough for 25 people. So I think the church or the police station is going to be the only option from now on, with the numbers of people that turn up. So a ward panel should be held quarterly, and there obviously should be a record of the minutes and an agenda and all documentation correctly filed. So that's the key aspects of a ward panel. Excuse me, I'm just going to refer to this bit of paper that I've got here, and I can find it. Right, so every ward panel should have an agenda. They can be tailored to the individual wards, but what we're recommending is just 9 points really. Apologies and introductions, as you would do for most meetings. Minutes and actions from the last meeting. Police actions on the previous priorities. Police report on crime, antisocial behaviour, ward panel survey results and activity. Point 5 is community concerns, and that's the important thing for us, for the community to feed back to us about their concerns at the ward panel meeting. We agree priorities and action them. We evaluate and suggest in community contact sessions as well, which we do quite often. So we often have coffee with a copper, or in Southall and other places, chai with a copper. We do engagement stalls, VOG stalls, crime prevention stalls. Anyone that wants us to have outreach to the public, we're more than happy to attend. We could do it outside, inside. We recently held a VOG day, Violence Against Women and Girls, at Ealing Broadway, that was quite successful. In fact, we run out of leaflets so quick we had to go and get some more. Quite a big uptake on that. So, yeah, we're very happy to do those as well. Point 8 is any other business, and then date of next meeting. So next steps, I guess, for us is to evaluate every ward panel when we make some changes and get more people in, to make sure that we are seeing some improvements on the uptake, because we need more people to join them. And the more attendance by members of the community, the better, as far as I'm concerned. We should have done already, because I've asked my sergeants to do it, to circulate a ward handbook to all of the ward chairs at the present time. I shall make sure that double check on that. And like I say, my commitment is to attend at least 2 of the 4 meetings, so 50% of all the meetings that are over the next year. I think ward panels are a vital tool between us and the community. It serves to understand how the community are feeling, but I think we need to make quite a few improvements of them.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
We have Ruki and we have Councillor Anand and Jess and Jags. We can stick to about 10 minutes max on all of this. So short questions, please, because we've got a big section on police update. Councillor Anand, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Inspector Ballard. Could I ask when the merger between Southall Green and Norwood Green is going to happen, and where have these conversations been held, and who have they been held with? My second question is does the chair have a term time in how long they can serve on the panel as a chair? And my final question is, where have you had chai with a copper in Southall? Have I missed this?
Thank you, Councillor. So the wards that you were talking about were Southall Green and Norwood Green, was it? That hasn't actually joined yet. We have been in communication with the ward chairs, as far as I understand, and through Jags and other people within the Southall community. The take up on Norwood Green was very high last time, but that's because it was summer and in a prime location. Dare I say a pub.
For the record, we had it in a pub, yeah.
But there were 50 people that attended, and that worked very well. So sometimes it depends on where the event is actually being held. I wouldn't suggest you would have that many people midwinter unless it had an open fire in the middle of it. Oh, there you go then. Okay. But predominantly, it's been very hard to reach out to Southall residents. And we've had some wall panel meetings where it's just been the chair in the past. So we are working on that. Councillor?
Thank you, through yourself, Chair. The difficulty has been where the chair has not been sending out the invites to the community. There has been no communication for a very, 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 very long time. As ward councillors, we have no idea where these meetings happen or when they happen. I'd really appreciate it if we could liaise with the team and the chair before we actually advertise those meetings, so we could take the message out to the community. At the end of the day, we are the voice of the community, and if we're not able to take that message, we're not going to get the community attending these meetings, which is so important, as you've said, that the engagement is so important for us to have with the community. But if the chair and the SNT could liaise with myself and John on the merger, and also advertising it out to the community. We have a wonderful radio station called Desi Radio, who will do the jingle for us at no cost at all, because they're very supportive of the work that they do with the local authority, the police and other voluntary sector groups in partnership. And we could get the message out to the businesses who don't know where these meetings are happening, to the voluntary sector groups, to the gurdwaras and the mandirs, and the mosque, which are heavily prominent in my ward, which is, I'm very passionate when I say my ward. I have two colleagues as well who represent the ward. And we have a large religious and church, of course, we've got large religious organizations who reside in the ward, and there is no connectivity at all with the South Hall Green SNT team. Thank you. You won't hear any more from me, Chair.
Councillor Ann, thank you very much. I mean, I will most certainly 100% take you up on your offer. I mean, ultimately, by joining the two ward panels, we have 6 councillors that can help us. I know you're very passionate about this, and I know John is, so we can hopefully move forwards. And most certainly, I will ask John Tween or Lawrence Busy. I'm unsure exactly who it's going to be, but I will ask them to liaise with you before we start putting any start having any conversations with members of the public. And yes, we can utilise a lot of other premises and radio as well, and all of our social media to try and attract as many people as we can. So thank you very much. And I believe that the tenure for any ward chair is 2 years. That's what I believe.
Actually,
Yes. Sorry, we'll go to Jess, then Jags, then Ruki, please.
Thanks. So just to kind of join it up, I suppose, as Lee and Sean will be aware, but some people on the board won't be, John and Councillor Annan will be. We have recently had some engagement with some members at the council just to promote and try and join up some of the ward panels a little bit better and try and support the police in engaging with councillors on the basis that, councillors, as Councillor Annan's outlined, I suppose, are embedded in those communities. So they're able to try and connect up and join and assist and support the police to try and get the meeting in the space they need it to be in. And also, if there's parts of the community that aren't represented there, I suppose, try and help link into people who might be able to activate or get some momentum into getting some engagement in that space. So I think this is a space where we will look to try and support the police to try and build the ward panels as a key kind of local engagement tool, but also a place where they can drive their trust and confidence message. I suppose there will always be a Safer Communities officer at each of the ward panels to talk about what the council are doing in that space and pick up any kind of overlap that sits on our side. So it is a work in progress, and we are committed to supporting the police to take that forward and making sure members have a really strong voice in that to support chairs locally as well. The other point I was going to raise, Lee, was you were talking about young people attending panels. I think there is always, whenever I speak to my colleagues in youth services, there is always a slight reality check. And we've had this in this forum where there's supposed to be a youth representative on this board, but we have to be kind of honest. And, in my younger days, I probably wouldn't make this kind of time as a teenager to have this rich and interesting conversation, but perhaps something that doesn't quite meet my level of interest in areas that I want to focus on at that particular point in my life. So there is something about how we work together and with other services about capturing that young people's views, whether it's through schools or other stuff, outreach, third sector, to try and understand from them what they're feeling about being safe and more broadly the police and working with them and building their confidence. But probably not through the forum of evening meetings and minutes and agendas necessarily, although some young people might enjoy it. But I think the feedback I've always had is it doesn't fit their needs. So we have to try and work around them instead of expecting them to work around us. So it's a bit of a head scratcher, that one, to be fair, but it's probably one we need to think about.
Yes, of course. Jags and then Ruki.
Yeah, just touching on Councillor Annan's point about engagement and the frequency. I think if we take it back and put it in context, pre-pandemic, since the meetings were stopped and everything else, it hasn't picked up. I totally accept that point. But historically, even before that, particularly in Southall, I can only speak on Southall, our numbers have been low because we've always had one issues come up. So people come with a particular issue at a particular time, which the officers will tend to deal with, but then are not committed to come back and follow it through again. They come and it's an opportunity to engage. That's most probably because our traditional forms of communication now moving harder to go into a police station, it's more digital, it's online. That's the opportunity they see. The problem is for the officers is we're looking as panels for longer term commitments on those panels, rather than it's becoming a mini police station on that day to say, oh, I've got this, this, and this, deal with it, and I'm off, and I expect you to deal with it. So I think there's a massive piece of work that has to be done, particularly in Southall, on the purpose of the ward. Whilst that's accepted, we're also looking for them to hold their responsibilities as citizens of the ward as well, that they are the eyes and ears, and reporting of crime is the other one. Again, today, I know we've been talking, everyone said crime numbers, and this is a pet hate. I always like to say it's reported crime, because in Southall, those numbers don't add up to what the reality is. So I put that out again. Our terminology should be reported crime, because it is very, very different. But I think at least we've started moving. Most probably a point for maybe Jess or Councillor Anand. I know you guys have done so much work on re-establishing the community forums again in Southall, and there's been huge amounts of research, and Evelyn has been involved in everything else. Has anything come forward on that? Whilst I know these will be separate, the ward panels that we all agree on, they are separate, but has there been any sort of indication of how that's going to work for the borough, and whether the team that Lee's trying to put together can influence or pick up tips now ahead of this changes and rollouts coming, so we're slightly ahead of the game and not then the council start theirs and we said, well, why didn't we do that format, or whatever that approach may be?
Yeah, sure.
Just please feel free to come in. We're in the final stages of completing our consultation around the borough and how people like to shape up the town forums for the future. There could be an overlap of some of the work that we do if people feel, or the councillors feel they want to discuss the issues around crime and safety in the town forums. That'll be their choice, and they will discuss it with the residents. I would like my ward forum, my town forum, to be sort of crime free, so that we use the SNT neighbourhood teams to discuss those issues there. And at the town forum level, we could maybe look at what we need to shape up in our towns better and connect our 7 towns, for the future. So that is, I think, a question for every town forum to discuss amongst themselves. But I think that once the consultation is over, Jags, we will then like to make sure that we're not clashing with each other's launches, because you're absolutely right. It has to have its own importance and how that goes out to the community, and we're not clashing with the dates, because that's what we don't want to do.
Finally, Ruki.
Just quickly, I think having a ward panel booklet would be a very good idea. I mean, it would cover some of the constitutional points, but just so you know that I have prepared a panel constitution for Ealing Broadway, which was approved at the last meeting, which does cover things like format, councillors not being able to vote, term of office, etc. So if anyone would like to see that, I'm happy to share, so you can use it for other ward panel.
Could I please request that, if you wouldn't mind? Is it suitable to send on an email to me?
Yep,
That
absolutely.
will be very useful. Thank you very much. I know you worked hard on that as well, because I know that there was a lot of people giving different directions within your meeting, put it that way.
Yes, certainly. I'll put my email in the chat as well, so if anyone else wants it from the other ward panels, happy to share, and I'll send it to you.
Very much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Jess, on the youth engagement, I'm starting and at the very, very early stages of a conversation with Notting Hill and Ealing School with 17 and 18-year-olds in relation to the possibility of one of them taking over a role on this board. It's early stages, but it's also the bigger picture from my point of view is also trying to engage the youth around, particularly the females across the borough, to try and get an idea of what they would like to see they don't want to talk to the police. Why? All those sort of questions. So that's at an early stage from my end. What I'm sort of hearing, Lee, is that it looks like that the ward panels are moving very, very much away from where we first started, where we had a sort of representative from businesses and various parts of the ward, but limited to a sort of number. So what we're saying now is that this is now going to be unlimited, because there is a bit of a fear, if you do have a chair there, that unfortunately it could end up to be a bit of a free-for-all. And I think it would need a strong chair. You know, I use the one that I sort of sat on, and I'm delighted to see that the chair is here from Pittshanger, Nigel Wynne. Nigel's an exceptionally good chair and has been a chair for a number of years. What I don't want to see here is for individuals to suddenly just come in with a broom, sweep it all out, and then start again when you've had dedicated individuals who have given a lot of time already to that panel, still have huge amounts of energy and concerns about their ward. So I think it's very important that we keep that at the forefront of our mind, but possibly adding to it. I think that is important.
Councillor Martin, thank you very much. Yeah, sorry. I knew I'd made a mistake at some point. So, John, thank you very much for your feedback. And I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So we are not going through the process of advertising for more people to attend wall panels without the chair's authorization. We will go through the chair. We will put out some communications we did in Acton to say, this is what we do. This is what's happening. Please come along and see. If you wish to attend, please contact the chair and we'll use an appropriate email that's agreed by the chair. And then that way, all the information is fed back to the chair. So we should know the numbers and the names of people that would be attending, because quite right, if we've only got a small hall, as some churches are, and we advertise and we get 50 people turn up, you're going to have 40 odd disgruntled people who can't get in, that may wreck the meeting anyway. So it's all done through the ward chair, with their approval and with their assessment of the people that are attending. We don't choose the people that are attending. It's just to get the idea of people out to the community for them to come along and engage with police.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next item because I'm conscious we have half an hour to get through quite a large part of the agenda. Now I know probably not a lot has changed statistic wise since the last meeting, as these have been quite close together. So I'm not expecting a deep, in-depth, thorough run through of all the statistics.
Evening, everyone.
We did that last month.
And welcome to everyone that's joining us online as well.
We've had a couple of apologies submitted to Sam. Do we have any others from anyone else? The rise in anti-Semitism, the rise in Islamophobia. So those,
Connie, you've got Connie.
probably
Right, then that moves us on to the minutes. Are we happy to approve the minutes of the meeting last month?
what are the impact of the
Everyone okay
protests
with
in
that?
Central London having on
Yeah.
Agreed.
in Ealing, and how are we
Brilliant.
safeguarding?
Just before we start, there's someone online under the name iPhone. We don't know who you are. If you've signed in on your iPhone, do you mind just letting us know your full name, please?
Really important subjects and the other elements that we talk about, crime and
Otherwise, we'll have to remove you from the meeting
So
before we
thank you. I've had a
continue.
really good, rich conversation and engagement, in general terms. And thanks
Okay,
for-
brilliant. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Right, well, without further ado, then we'll move on to the third item, which is the project update from John.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As I reported at the last meeting, we have 4 projects agreed. One has already started.
This
The
is
other
just
3
James trying to say
start
something.
into the new
I'm
year.
one of the people
I'll be
who are logged
visiting
in,
the personal
and we seem to be
safety
getting a
and
replay of the start of
self-defense
the meeting.
project
We
on
can't
the
hear what's
2nd of
happening in the room
December,
anymore.
and hopefully Sarah
How long has that been
will be
going
able
on
to
for,
attend
James?
with us on that.
Last 5 minutes.
Okay.
In relation to a
We can't hear
query,
anything live
or an
now.
action from the previous
think it's been fixed.
meeting that James raised.
Can you hear
I
us?
have spoken to MOPAC in relation to the possibility of using some of our funds that are available. Unfortunately, MOPAC resisted it, but it is going back up the ranks to see if it is possible. Just for those that are new.
It sounds like the recording has
we received
started.
Yeah.
Can someone stop
funding
We're
it?
going back to the beginning and we're hearing the recording. We're not
which
hearing the voices in the room.
projects,
So someone at your end,
and we've
just
chosen
press the
for
play
or
button
agreed
on
with
the
MOPAC,
record.
and those, as I said, are proceeding. But as a result of
Oh, perfect.
Right, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we've sorted out the issue.
Thank you.
Good.
Sorry about that, but thanks for being awfully quiet. It's 5 minutes.
I don't think you could hear us. We were shouting.
Right, shall I hand that back over to you, Superintendent, if you want to make those few points, just so everyone can hear that online? Sorry.
I was effectively giving lots of praise and thanks. Sorry to everyone on that last agenda item, which hopefully you did hear some of it, just in terms of contribution of existing wall panel chairs and what they brought to the conversation, also what we're trying to achieve, I suppose, going forward. So, but thank you, because I know not only is it the time that's in the meetings, it's the prep, it's all the thought that goes in between intervening meetings as well. So, and all the follow up and everything else that happens. So, I'm really grateful, and it's great that you're here tonight. Thank you. And yeah, I suppose that leads us into the topic, which I'm not sure everyone online would have heard, but this is the police update, and you wanted us to focus on obviously current policing activities in terms of the ongoing, obviously, international events, which, as we know, has played out hugely across London. And you set the scene just in terms of the increase in hate crime effectively across a number of communities that we're seeing across London, and also obviously replicated across the UK. I mean, in terms of the local policing response and what that response looks like with the strategic partnership, I mean, I will also let obviously Councillor Anand and Jess talk about what other activity has been happening within the council setting alongside the police as well. What I would say is there's been a really united front in terms of our coordinated approach. You will have seen from the Met's perspective, obviously it's been a very challenging space. I'm sure you've all seen the media reports in the last month or so, 6 weeks, just in terms of our core purpose and role, of which I'd like to think that has been adopted locally in terms of being representative of the communities, making sure that we police without fear and favour, and we're doing everything we possibly can in terms of increasing our engagement opportunities across all settings. And I know that that's been the direction that I've been giving to Lee and to my teams in Ealing, and my expectation of all of them. So, and we have been out to so many venues to try to do just that, to reassure, to make sure there's that visible presence. There's an awful lot of, as you can imagine, grip, I suppose, from the police side that's come with some of the coordinate operations, not just locally, but also from our strategic operations room. And you talked about it in the kind of lead into the topic discussion in terms of some of the major events that we've seen. Of course, the last weekend, probably, I suppose, being the pinnacle of that with, you know, the various marches that we've seen across London. That has a huge impact naturally on our resourcing picture, and you've seen lots of officers working lots of long hours, and in addition to Lee's commitments around ward panels, he's also worked a number of weekends alongside myself, which is replicated across many of the officers that work in West Area and in the neighbourhood setting within Ealing. And we will continue, because we understand that this isn't something that's going to, you know, continue obviously for a number of months, if not longer. So we are here to try to support communities, and we know this is going to be a very long and protracted response across London. So lots happening. We have a number of kind of grip meetings every single day, which governs how we operate and function as a police team alongside our partners. But we've also, I suppose, added in extra layers of scrutiny and and accountability that comes with that as well. And the BCU Commander, Sean Wilson, has been involved in a lot of work that's been happening centrally in addition to his role locally with the neighbourhood superintendents. I suppose, what does that all look like? So we will be tracking every single incident that takes place where we know it's linked to the ongoing conflict. We will make sure through our faith officers, in conjunction with our council partners and also our hate crime officers, that every single victim of any particular incident, whatever the severity and nature, gets a good police response and a victim-based response about what that looks like. We are constantly tracking incidents, assessing the impact. We have daily community tension monitoring, of which we feed into alongside some of our other partners around the table, to make sure that we have a bit more of a nuanced response in response to any incidents that take place. We have had a number of incidents, we know, in local faith premises, too many. And we are actively working policing operations to try to bring those people to justice that have feel it's acceptable to daub venues with paint and feel as though it's acceptable, obviously, and that they have a green light to conduct hate crimes, which is clearly not. So, and we will continue in our relentless pursuit to bring those people to justice. Lee and my teams, including myself, have been out to many venues to try to reassure, especially in light of some of these recent incidents that we've seen, and we will continue to do so with council and other partners around the table. We are seeing an increase, just like, you know, is being reported across London, but we aren't seeing the increase and the scale that is being reported across other areas of London, and we are tracking it every single day. I was on call yesterday, and a typical day will involve me holding a meeting locally where we assess any incident that we know has taken place in the last 24 hours and making sure we've got a policing response. And that's an additional layer in terms of officers on additional high-vis patrols, not just those that are investigating the incidents. So there's a lot that's happening, and we will continue to support our local communities in that space. And we recognise how challenging and emotive it is and how difficult it is for so many, but you know, we are there, we're trying to do our absolute best, and we will continue with the high visibility patrols and presence and engagement work across London. And if there are people that we know have committed crimes, we are actively pursuing them every single day to bring them to justice. So I've probably talked quite a lot there, I suppose, in terms of some of the stuff that we're doing, but it is relentless. And I'll hand over to Leah if he's got anything else further to add around our local response.
I just really want to talk about, if it's okay, about some of the other work that we've been doing. The obviously incidents, the ongoing conflict in the Middle East is a big part of our work, you know, as Mr. Lynch has said, to make sure that all of our communities feel safe, that they're not targeted. So I'm going out to as many venues that I can to engage with them, to reassure them that we're there and to assure them that we have a positive action policy. And I'm pleased to say that I now have, I don't know whether everyone's aware, but I now have a dedicated faith officer to Ealing. And this is all part of the new Met for London. Prior to that initiative or that commitment being undertaken, PC Mohammed Dar, who's my faith officer, used to cover 3 boroughs. So he used to cover Hounslow, Hillingdon and Ealing. And also he was ultimately just almost split into thirds, because I always wanted him, Hillingdon always wanted him, Hounslow always wanted him, and we only had one. We've now gone down an initiative where we've got 1 per borough. So this is just one of the very small parts of the improvements that we've made across the borough. So PC Mohammed Dar is now, dare I say, mine for Ealing, and I work with him and speak with him on a daily basis, and we go out to all of these religious premises and to venues that feel that they need some support from us. So that's a big commitment that we're taking on board. But just to give you a flavour of what else we've dealt with in the last month alone, obviously we've started off with Halloween, a very challenging night around certain parts of the borough with people letting off fireworks at police even. But one of my officers had a very good initiative and basically spoke to all the people that were selling fireworks, and very few were sold in Greenford. Unfortunately, that caused youths to move to a different part of the borough and spend all their money there and cause problems around that. So I've got a plan ahead of next year to combat the selling of fireworks to underage children, and we're going to target all of the shops before that actually happens next year, because we now know that it works. But that was a very busy night for us, Halloween. We've also had 5th of December, so firework night, also a very busy night. And I've got...
You jumped 2 months there. Oh, you're sorry, you jumped into 5th of December.
Did I say December?
You did.
Oh, apologies, sorry. I blame it on my memory and my age.
No,
So 5th of November, sorry, 5th of November. So yeah, 5th of November, fireworks night, very, very busy night again for us. But we've also had, since then, Armistice Day events that we've supported, of course, that we have facilitated, including stopping some traffic to allow silence to occur. We've also had Remembrance Sunday, where we've supported events across the borough in Southall, Greenford and Ealing, 3 very large events there. That also brings us on to Nagia Curtin. I think I pronounced that right. Pretty much there. Okay, I've got it right for once. Thank you very much. Where we estimate, that's a Met estimate, 40,000 people attend an event stroke festival in Southall where the roads are closed. Happens twice a year. And we police that with all of our, I say police it, we were there, but it's family orientated, so we're engaging more than policing. And we had 1 crime, but we had 4 lost infants. We all recovered those back to their parents quite quickly, because we have a plan in place for anyone who's missing. We have good radio communication. So we are learning each year on this, but it was a very, very well attended and well behaved event. And it was nice to attend, because I don't get many of those, to be honest. And then we had, so I'm trying to work out what ones I've covered. We've also had Diwali as well, which was, I think, perhaps the busiest that I've seen since I've been doing this job in the last 5 years, and just the volume of fireworks, the sound of them, to me, they're not just shop fireworks. They seem to be, they seem to be a lot more explosive and a lot bigger noise. So that's something I need to take on board next year, because it does cause a lot of other people concern, the volume and the loudness of them. I don't want to stop the event, and of course that's not our role, but it is to try and make it safe. So that's something I need to work on next year. So that's just a flavour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 large events that we've covered in the last few weeks alone.
Thanks, Chair. And Lee is predominantly leading a lot of that work. So, I mean, he's very, as you say, he's got 48 meetings to get to as well. Yeah, he will lose his hair one day. And in addition to that, you know, he leads a lot of the local policing operations, which is superb. He really is out there, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But there's other operations as well, which I know we haven't got into the stats yet, Chair, but which don't make great reading, but nonetheless, there are other operations that are out there trying to have a positive impact. So we've talked about it. Lee mentioned it, but he didn't drop in the council's involvement with the violence and male-dominated violence against women and girls events, which we had at Ealing Broadway. which I'm immensely grateful for. And of course, that is part of a wider strategy with the local strategic partnership, which will lead into next year. And yeah, it was a really good event. There was a lot of interaction and a great engagement opportunity. Lee and I seized the opportunity of doing some walk and talks and also doing some local community walks as well. And it was incredible, the amount of interest that we both had on that particular day. And you wouldn't believe some of the questions that we had. So they were really entertaining. And they don't just feature around violence. So yeah, it was great. And that's one thing that I think you'll see more of, more visibility from me and from Lee and from my chief inspector as well, supporting our teams. In addition to what we've talked about in terms of all of the engagement linked to the Middle East, obviously we continue with business as usual. Dare I say it, whatever that looks like in the Met is tricky at the moment. It's very challenging. We've got a real focus on violence. Lee has mentioned that. We have a number of we have a couple of areas where we do some extra work, I suppose around high visibility and also some problem solving, which will feature some of our nighttime economy areas and also our town centre locations. So that work continues in the background, which is really good, and we'll do so towards the Christmas period as well. Again, Lee undersells some of the work that he does, and with the teams locally, we've had some other operations which are planned operations, which we do at transport hubs and on the Elizabeth line. More recently, we had one in Southall, if I recall, only a week or so ago, or last week, which again is really interesting in terms of some of the crimes that we pick up and we detect, and some of the people that we intercept as well coming through the borough. And on that same theme, we've also had an operation using behavioural detection officers, which is a tactic we use with plainclothes officers linked to violence against women and girls. And again, equally, one of the well, I think it's the second deployment we've had, even Broadway and at South, or we've had a number of arrests, which are really worth sharing, just in terms of how we are making communities safer. Where we've had officers that have actually been assaulted, spat at by people, female officers who are deployed on some of these operations in plain clothes. We've had registered sex offenders arrested, and we've also had other people that have been wanted for other crime types, predominantly on this borough as well, which is really useful as a result of those plain clothes deployments, which are there deliberately to make communities safer and in our violence against women and girls hotspots. And we'll continue to do those operations up until Christmas and beyond. This week is Operation Sceptre. Again, Lee didn't mention that because he's got a lot going on in his head. But it's another, obviously, national initiatives where we're targeting habitual knife crime carriers, violence hotspots, and myriad of other tactics. There'll be work going on in safe schools, environment, lots of other things that will be going on as well. So, which is a topic and a subject matter which is really, I find really engaging, and it's obviously linked to carrying of knives and the prevention of ultimately fatalities across the streets of Ealing, and we'll continue to work hard in the neighbourhood setting with all of those operations. And then there's many others as well, which I'm sure I could showcase, but I won't. But it's just to make the point of the tireless approach, I suppose, from the local partnership with the council and police teams to try to make, with our our finite resources, a difference locally, and increase that visibility. And still in the back of my mind, of course, Jags, you'll know, leading into my next New Met for London event, about what's actually different. What has Sean Lynch delivered with his teams? What is he doing? What are we doing in the year one? What are we doing, stretch targets to year 3? So, and there's many other things that I can talk about where we've come together with the council to forward look, I suppose, what our policing teams will look like in the next year and a half. So, which is really, really positive. And I'll pause there, and I know Lee's going to go through some stats if we've got time, Chair. Hopefully we have.
We have a few minutes, and then I'd like to allow the rest of the time for any questions, if that's all right. Do you just want to, I know usually you need quite a while to go through this, but perhaps any key statistics, anything that may have differentiated from last month's report on the statistics?
Thanks, Chair. What you'll notice, obviously, we don't have the long list of stats. We've tried to go to a slightly abridged version of this, so I'll defer, Chair, to. Oh, here we go. Here come the stats. That's good. Over to you then, Nick.
These are the crimes, disappeared. Thank you. These are the crimes, hopefully everyone can see that. These are the crimes that Safer Neighbourhoods officers, so all of my teams are now judged on.
Can you share the screen? Oh, good. Thank you.
Can everyone see that now?
We can now.
Fantastic. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can see the crimes there. So these are the crimes that we as Safe Neighbourhood officers are now judged on. We're targeted on these, and they include obviously all the ones on the left: personal robbery, residential burglary, theft from person, vehicle offences, serious violence, violence with injury, violence against women and girls, antisocial behaviour, and faith hate crime. So anything with green is good, anything with red is an increase. And as you can see, there's a lot of increase on there. But we are in a period of the year, autumn nights stroke winter nights, where it gets darker, and there are seasonally a lot more crimes at the moment than there will be in the summer. Some of the key ones there, obviously, for the last 4 weeks, personal robbery has gone up 69.1%. So 55 crimes has gone up to 93. I mean, you can see all those for yourself. What I don't really want to do is spend 10 minutes going through all of those statistics. The crime trend lines are year to date by weeks, and some of them are coming down, some of them are going up. They're the ones that I'm looking at, as well as the current 4 weeks and previous 4 weeks. So there's a lot of work for us to do. We're aware that we've got a lot of work to do, and this is a borough statistic as well. So it's not only myself as neighbourhoods that are trying to get these all in green. It's response team, it's local investigations, and it's all of our partners as well that we work with. So we are trying to make some improvement on those figures. I could quite happily go for everyone, but I don't think we've got a lot of time. So if people want to fire any questions, I'll try and answer them as best I can.
Yes, we've got about 7 minutes left, so we could probably take about 2 questions if anyone's got any questions. If they've not, then Lee can carry on. Go, Jess.
Be helpful just to pick up the personal robbery stuff at some point and work out where does that 69% manifest itself, I suppose, because there might be something we can do collectively to try and respond. I don't know. It's just be useful to get a bit of insight separately outside of the meeting.
So thank you very much, Jess. I attend a weekly violence meeting that robbery falls into that. So we discuss violence every week. And I attended a TTCG meeting, which is a monthly meeting that discusses violence against women and girls, robbery, burglary, and other serious crimes, serious violence. So there's a lot that we've discussed today, and the personal robbery for Ealing is around Ealing Broadway. I'm putting extra assets into that. We are working to try and bring that down. We're going to be working with CCTV. I've also got the go-ahead also to put police officers in CCTV control room. Don't know whether you know that yet, Jess, but got the go-ahead for that. And these are officers that what I would class as good spotting officers, people that know what's going to happen before it actually happens. So we're putting some good officers in there that call it out before it happens, to get police into those spots to try and prevent robberies and try and catch suspects. We're also doing a lot of crime prevention work, and this all emanates really from Ealing Broadway being a huge hub where people come through, where people work, where people travel to, and a lot of nighttime economy. So we're putting a huge amount of resources into that at the moment. I've just received some further funding to pay officers overtime to do more hours in those hotspots to try and capture and prevent any further victims of crime.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I mean, I know, I'm sorry that we've run out a bit of time, and I know that you want to stick to time. My apologies. There's obviously so much we'd like to share. So, I mean, in terms of the robbery bit, as we're showcasing it, and you would have known, you saw, I did a walk around recently with the Mayor and the Commissioner, where we deliberately chose Ealing Broadway, deliberately for that reason, because we knew it was a challenging space. But it was to start that conversation, which you've seen play out in the national media, where the Commissioner and other stakeholders have been discussing how phone companies can do more effectively to target hard and support us in our plight, because most of the robberies that you see there will involve mobile phones. The majority of them will be. So, of course, there's lots of work that we do around the preventative side, but it is still amazing when I walk through Ealing Broadway myself, whether on duty or off duty, the number of people that have put their phone in their back pocket. And I know that this is seasonal, and I won't, you know, second guess that, but there's a lot more that we should be doing as a partnership in terms of visual aids, displays, things at stations, lots of other stuff around the preventative side. Lee works really hard and tirelessly to do the high vis and the visibility work and targeting offenders, and the people element is really important, but there's still a lot more that we could be doing, I think, locally, alongside what else is happening, I suppose, in the Met in terms of lobbying. But yeah, grateful for that conversation, Jess, and thanks again for your continued contribution with your community safety team. Some of our meetings that we have where we conjointly tackle these crime types, not just from the police side. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any final questions from anyone online before we close the meeting up? Carolyn, we'll take one from you and then we'll close up.
I wondered if it would be possible, bearing in mind we're coming up to Christmas, there'll be a lot of people from Hamwell, from my point of view, going to shop in Ealing. Are there, you know, maybe 3 or 4 bullet points that you can provide us with that we can share with our communities that will help keep them safe? For example, you know, I've attended, I don't know how many Safer Neighbourhood team meetings. It's the first time I've heard anyone say that, you know, I've heard them say it's mobile phone, but I've assumed, and people have said that, you know, just taken from their hands or whatever when they're on the phone and someone goes by in the moped. If we've got people with mobile phones in back pockets, one bullet point would be, don't put your mobile phone in your back pocket, because that's where X percentage of robberies occur from. So if there's anything like that you can let us have that will help people keep themselves safe and their belongings safe in this Christmas shopping period, it would be terrific. We can share that before Christmas.
Thank you again. Yeah, absolutely, Carolyn. Thank you. And Lee's nodding. And there's a lot of messaging that we put out at certain times of the year. It should be really, if I'm honest, constant, because I suppose the methodology of some of the crime types doesn't really seem to change. But yeah, there are opportunities to do more, definitely, in that space. So thank you. We will get more information out, which we will share via the ward panel chairs, including yourself. Thank you. And incidentally, on the way here, I signposted someone to Hanwell to go shopping tonight on the way to this meeting. So it's not always going towards Ealing Broadway.
It depends what you're buying. You're not going to buy your big goods in Hanwell Broadway, frankly, or your nice shoes or anything like that. That's not going to happen. But if you want a good burger, yeah.
Don't forget Pitsanger Lane.
Right, thank you all. As always, thank you both for your contribution and all the hard work that's going on. I'm really looking forward actually to our next meeting to get all the updates on the various projects and pilots and things that are going on. I think you've got your work cut out for you for the next couple of months. Thanks for everyone online for joining, and Nigel from Pitsanger, thank you for attending and bearing with us for quite a long meeting. Stay safe, have a good winter, and see you all next year. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank